Hello art lovers, or those who would love to love art. Welcome to my window art gallery. I'm Loretta, and my role in these videos is to be a sleuthsayer of culture using art. Try to remember that the viewer is always right and your views matter. I will pause the video to give time for you to write down what the art brings up for you. It could be feelings, emotions, a story, a memory, or commentary on something that's going on in our culture. Whatever comes up, take a few minutes, write it down. Don't censor, just write down what comes to your mind. Okay, here's the composition for today. It is drywall on with wallpaper and acrylic paint and latex paint. And this is from the series If These Walls Could Talk, and it's called Caged Minds. It's 32 inches by 48 inches. Okay, here I'll give you a closer look. So just write down what comes to mind when you look at this composition. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, for me, I'll say what this composition means to me. When I have been looking over it since I've done it, it means about patriarchy and how women's minds have been caged by the programming of and conditioning in our culture. And when I was doing this composition, there are some women that showed up in this while I was doing it. There was a woman here who reminded me of my mom's generation in the 40s. There was a woman here who showed up from the 1800s. And there was a woman here that reminded me of me when I was a teenager in the 70s. And there's a pregnant woman here. There's a woman here who is exercise, kind of reminds me of the 80s. And in here reminds me of a Cinderella. And here is a stream that's coming through with all of these bloodlines running through. If you can see, I'll move it closer so you can see right here. These are all how we are all connected through the generations. And then we see this a mountain range up here of all the mountains that needed to be climbed over the generations trying to get women's equality. And in the back there's all of the past and all of the other cages, or it could mean in the future, and how many cages in our caged mind programming and being stuck in how we've been taught to think. And then when I stepped back, I actually saw a tree, and the growth of a tree and the sturdiness of a tree. And I also saw, I also put two warrior poses, women, on top of the cage. I'll put that closer so you can see them. Right there, to show hope in the future, and trying to get it so that we aren't caged. The journey and the struggle to get equality and to even in my own mind. So when I started to look up about patriarchy, and I started to see that I had been programmed to treat women in a different way than I treated men. When women walked into the room, they weren't given the same. When a man walks into the room, he's given the shadow of the doubt. We think that he knows all the answers. We give him leadership. We ask him questions. We sit and we listen to his stories. We ask him about his life and what he's doing, what sports he plays, what art he does, what he does in his life. But we don't give that same thing to women. And it was because it was programmed in my head. Or we would say, oh, I don't want to work with a woman because they're catty. And yet we work with the men who, were predators in my day. And then I started to ask myself, why? Why are women catty? Like, I needed to check it out. And so these are all of the lines that have been passed on from generation to generation that had programmed me into thinking these things, because in reality we're all just human beings, and we all want to be loved, and we all want to love. So this has all been conditioned, and like a tree grows from its roots, we grew from our roots. And to uncage my mind, now that I've studied patriarchy and all of these layers and conditioning, trying to stop being derogatory to myself, because that's acceptable. If I put myself down in a group, people think that's okay. But if I say something positive about myself, everybody gets quiet. But men can come in and say, oh, gee, I won this thing, and I'm the top of my game in my business, or and everybody wants to listen and support them and saying, wow, good for you. Or even I've noticed in women with small businesses, even online, I'll notice that I went to this new thing that was put on in my town, and it was put on by men, and it was packed. And then there's a couple of women who tried to start their own adventure also. And when I went to it, there was only a couple of women there. And this is all conditioning, right? There's enough for everybody, and yet we get into this competition, and it's because our mind is caged. So for me, this is what this piece means to me, which is going to be different than what it means to you. Whatever the viewer sees is right for you, and it is in us looking at art and just letting our minds open up and see what we see, feel what we feel, that we will start to be free of the caged minds in our culture. When we dare to look at a piece of art and say, I'm thinking this or I'm feeling this from this piece of art, you're right. The viewer is always right. Even if the artists say, nope, that's not what it is, that artist has no say over what you see in the art. It is from, when we look at art, is from our life experience, from our, what we've gone through in our life, the things that mean something to us. So every symbol in this piece could mean something different for everybody. So it will help you to uncage your mind when you look at art and decide to make your own story from what you see and feel and think, whether you like it or don't. If you don't like a piece, that will help you in life to say, these are the things I like, these are the things that I don't. It doesn't mean everybody should like it or everybody should hate it. It's just our experience in our life and what it means to us. So I invite you to come back, keep exploring art, learn about our programming and culture through stepping into art, your interpretation, do some sleuthing, then maybe do something different in your life. Thank you for visiting my window art gallery. You could be anywhere today, and you chose to be here, and I appreciate that. Thanks.